Afternoon.
I apologize. Lubbock and Plainview, how are you all?
We're fine in Lubbock.
Doing good. Mr.
Good.
Hope, this is Judy.
Hi, Judy.
Hi. You sent me the syllabus and the art appreciation of the cover letter, I think it's called, and other stuff. Do I just give them the Chahuli one?
Yes, we're going to do that right now, in fact. So if y'all got that, let's go ahead and distribute that, and I'll talk about it here in just a moment. Thank you.
Okay, that was the only thing, right?
Yes, we'll talk about that here right first, and then on Thursday, I'll give review notes at the end of class. So I'll send you all those later,
Okay, thank
tomorrow
you.
or sometime. You bet. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yes.
Okay, everyone. It's a little early, right before 1, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about this. Uh, this exploring glass, and I'll put this on screen here, maybe. Uh, yeah, here we go. Paper you just received from me or your facilitators in Lubbock, Plainview. Oh. Uh, I'm not sure what's happening, but it will. You need one of these. Here you go. Please put your name on that. And I've asked everyone to put their name on this. Did you get one? Make sure. I don't know if I left one back here. Okay. This is Exploring Glass, Del Chihuly. This is an art criticism exercise that I want you to do. It's for extra credit points. I left one for you back there a minute. But I'll talk about what exactly I want you to do, but make sure you put your name on this. You don't have to write your answers on this sheet. I've given some space, but it may not be sufficient for your answers. Just 3 questions. This is easy, but this is a required assignment. And you notice down at the bottom it says this assignment is due. Please put October 21st, which is a week from Thursday on there. Right, October 21st, Thursday. Here you go. Did you get one? I may not put one back there for you. So please put your name on this. You wait. Please put your name on this, and at the top, here where it says this assignment is due, put Thursday, October 21st, which is a week from Thursday. This is a required assignment. You notice it says not completing this assignment will result with 10 points being deducted from your final grade. And yes, I will do that. I have before. And sometimes this is the breaking point for some folks, sadly. And I've had students say, Mr. Hope, why is my grade 10 points lower than I thought it would be? You didn't turn in that assignment. And it's easy. It's 3 questions, okay? And I think you'll have fun doing this. So this is sort of my intro to doing art criticism. Some of you have done some things. You've looked at artwork and written something about it for extra credit. And by the way, I did get grades imported. Hold on, here you go. This is for you. I did get grades exported to Grade Center. That's yours. Please put your name on it. And at least I got the permissions exported, but I haven't put grades in. So by the end of this week, I will have all grades and all extra points put in there. So y'all bear with me, please. A week from today, October 19th, we will have the exam over Unit 2. So hang in there. I've got to re-log in here, but so we're going to kick things off here with this today, and then we'll jump right into the last part of the unit here, finishing with printmaking and then talking about photography and digital video. So anyway, make sure that you put on this Exploring Glass Del Chihuly your name, first and last name, and then at the bottom here it says this is due Thursday, October 21st. That's a week from Thursday. Make sure that you get that to me on time. Now, you may wish, there's not much space here, and some of you may wish to write more. I'm not giving you much direction here, because the first question says, look at the different glasswork that Chihuly has done. You're going to say, who's Chihuly, what's that about? I'll show you in a moment. And you'll go to this website actually and do that, chihuly.com. I'll show you that. But you're just going to write something about one of the works or more than one of the works. You can include pictures if you want to send this to me at my email address. And remember, if you try to contact me any other way, right, besides sending to jhope@southplainscollege.edu, you don't get me, okay? So that's the address. It's on your syllabus. Send me anything you'd like. If you have questions or anything, many of you contacted me. But you may do this in pages or Word document and send it to me. You can include photos in there. Impress me. The more you do, the better you do, the more time you spend. And I think you'll enjoy this work enough to get into it a little bit, the more points you'll get. Now, it's possible to have 10 points deducted from your grade with this if you don't do it. But it's also possible to earn 10 or more points that are added right into your average. Good deal, right? It's the best deal you've had today, right? All right. So, the second one asks, look at the different work created by Chihuly and his team, and you'll see them working here in a moment, and then comment in your own words If you could own one yourself, money wasn't an object, you could have one in your house, which one would you like? I know one person in Lubbock who has money, and she's been to the Chihuly studio, and she bid on a piece and won the bid. I don't know how much. She didn't tell me how much she paid for it, but it's a big deal. You can find them online, and they sell for just a few $1,000s on up. But it's a Chihuly original glass sculpture done by him and his team. And then he discusses several things that give him the creative spark that are his inspiration. So find one series of glass sculptures, and I'll show you those in a moment. And then what was his inspiration? And then tell me, be specific about that. But before we do that, let's watch this. Let me put this on screen.
Grammarly can help you write quickly and confidently.
Sorry.
You never have to slow
Thank
down
you
at
for
work.
the unsolicited testimonial. Okay, here we go. This one I want you to see. So you see them rotate the blowpipe because gravity's fighting against this hot glass. That's a piece of wet wood, and then you see the metal tools, and here are the finished pieces here, sitting out in the snow. So there's a little bit of history in this. I'm not going to show you the whole 26 plus minutes of this, but you'll see Chihuly, and this talks about his inspiration working with Harvey Littleton. Not many people were doing glass blowing when he was beginning to do this, but now his studio, he and his wife and friends that are his team, are the premier glass studio in the world.
When I was at the University of Washington doing textiles in 1962 or 3, and I fused little bits of wire into glass and put them in a tapestry, and got very involved with glass and very interested in the colors. And one night I melted a bunch of stained glass in a little kiln and stuck a piece of gas pipe on the floor into it and blew a bubble, I was very lucky that I got a bubble because
it's not easy to do. He says, now you notice he's wearing an eye patch, and you think, okay, he's working with glass at 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit, so he lost his eye, right? Well, he did lose his eye to glass, but he was in a car accident when he was traveling in Great Britain. And I don't know if you've ever, I hope you've never in a car wreck where the glass is broken. Safety glass, yes, is safe, but what happens when it breaks? It goes into tiny little needle shards. And we had a tumbleweed hit our windshield one time in a storm like we had Sunday, and our windshield shattered and glass went everywhere. And thankfully my wife was sleeping while I was driving, and her eyes were closed and she wasn't hurt. But for weeks we cleaned these little needle shards of glass out. So something like that happened, and except one penetrated his eye, and so he lost his eye. So he lost his depth perception too, so which is essential for working with hot glass. And if you drop that ball of glass on your foot, no more foot. It's just that simple. So you see these guys that are casual about this. I've done a little bit of glass blowing. It's serious business. You pay attention to everything, and everybody's working together, very coordinated to do this. So it's kind of amazing. I'm going to show you a couple of excerpts here where they're working. Okay, this is taking it out of the kiln and spinning it. So you have to work with centrifugal force and gravity. It's on the blowpipe. You see them adding a little lip, a rim of other colored glass. That glass has a metal in it, so it's a lustrous kind of metallic glass, and putting a little line around it. Those are just wooden paddles that are soaked in water, and shaping it, and keep spinning it so gravity doesn't work against it and sag it.
Goes back a couple of thousand years, but I like to think of it as being really developed in Murano from about 1000 to 16th or 17th century. It really flourished in there, and the Venetians were very clever to isolate the glass blowers on the island of Murano, and it was a tremendous commodity for them.
Murano.
This secretive tradition in Europe and Murano, I was fortunate enough to
So
go
he's
there.
using centrifugal force. You can see the design of the glass, so different colors of glass mixed in there. And then I'll kind of skim ahead here to a place or two. You see them picking up, taking the hot glass and picking up some
All the
granular
colors
glass
will be on the inside.
in there,
And
and using
we'll
that
go in
blow
again,
pipe,
come
air
over
pressure.
with hot glass, and pick up the white clouds. And the reason for these white clouds, other than the fact that they're an element in themselves as clouds, that white opaque glass offers a buffer between the next layer of color and the first layer of color. After Benny has put on the clouds, he then heats it up and marvers the clouds in. He smooths them on that steel plate. It's called a marver. So he reheats 2 or 3 times.
Kind of see the colors
and
coming
brings it
out
over
there.
and rolls it on the marver. And after that's set up, he then gathers in the furnace once again.
It's pretty dramatic stuff, and then you'll see them, you can watch this whole thing, but you'll see them putting pieces of glass here on the steel,
Which one is stretched
and
out more?
arranging this. He's drawing. This is him using all these pencils and designing.
So
that's his main job now, is to supervise all this. And you can see that in the
Done really anything you wanted to
website
do.
too.
Crown, which again,
Trying to skip through this, but it has to go back in the furnace
Gather of hot glass.
and get more and more glass added to it, and then you're going to see them put these little rods or threads of glass there
Drawing
on the
that
steel
Flora
plate.
and Joey have preheated so that this hot glass doesn't shock the drawing so that it breaks.
and then gently work that into the glass so that they can have a way of designing onto the glass as detail. Are you watching
And
this
he
on your
immediately
screen?
goes over to the glory hole to begin to fuse it in. And then it's a process of marvering, smoothing out that drawing, smoothing out the whole. The entire form now has gotten sort of out of shape, and so he wants to get it symmetrical again.
So they just have to keep working it back and forth, and they can blow on it, they can use gravity, they can spin it, centrifugal force, and shaping it. But you'll see some of the amazing things that they do. They've got glass collections in museums all over the world, and private collections. Their exhibits, the closest big exhibit to us is in Oklahoma City. There's some in the Opera Center, the Performing Arts Center right outside of Ruidoso. Dallas Museum has a wall of them. But I want to go from here, I want to close this up, and I'm going to go to, let's see here, go to this site, chihuly.com, which is what you're going to go to do this. And it's his personal website, the website of him and his team. So that's what you're going to go to. And you can scroll through this and see different things here. But go to the menu. And then you can go to his work. And this is what I want you to do with these 3 questions. Go to this place, and you can go to each of these things. His basket series, and he talks about his inspiration there. And then you can click on Explore, and you can see some of the different amazing things that they're doing there. And they have good photographs of them. It says inquire, that means you can check on the price in case you got a little spare change, right? But he talks about his, aren't they beautiful? And so you can click on any of these. You can click plus and enlarge it there. Well, it's not much of an enlargement. Might be something going on with this crazy screen here. Anyway, you can see those, and then you can watch a little video. So you can see a video about how they were created, which is something.
Yeah, hang it down.
You know how to make that smoother? Make the bottom bigger. Tends to look better when they're
So
bigger.
they're breaking it off and using special gloves.
so
They
heavy.
have to put it into
I'm
the
trying to
heat
make them wipe it.
to let it cool down
Don't worry
slowly
about them looking heavy.
over 12 to 24 hours. gravity to shape it, and then adding this other design on there and using the torch. And that's the annealing oven, where it has to cool down gradually, slowly, or it would crack, it'd just shatter. So, this assignment shouldn't be drudgery to you. It's pretty exciting stuff, isn't it? Pretty amazing. So, it should be easy for everyone to answer 3 questions, and I'm always just baffled why some people don't do this. But you can go to the menu and look at the different work and look at the different series of things, the cylinders. Glass on glass, which is a fairly new way of doing things. The Ikebana, you can find out what that means. The installations, and these are in places all over the world. They do these installations even outdoors. There's one now, I think, or coming up soon in Arizona in the botanical gardens. In all this cactus, they're setting up all these amazing huge sculptures, and I've seen them. They're 3 stories tall. There's a chandelier in London in the Victoria and Albert Museum, which is just amazing. So, and the Jerusalem cylinders, some of you will like those. His light drawings, which he does, you'll see how he draws using squeeze containers like we put ketchup or mustard in, and he mixes paint in there and then squeezes it onto the canvas or the paper. And you can even buy his drawings. And you'll find out what makia are, and the Persian series, and the putti, Rotolo series, the sea forms. I mean, it's just amazing. Every time I look through this, they change this all the time. I see something new, and you can spend an hour easily looking through this, watching the videos and so on. However much time you have, but I don't think you'll be bored at all. It's pretty amazing stuff. And I've had students tell me, Mr. Hope, thank you for showing us this about Chihuly. It's amazing stuff, it really is. So I hope you enjoy the assignment. Remember, it's due a week from Thursday. And any questions anybody has? Okay, I'm going to close this out, and then let's see. I think we finished printmaking last time, but I did want to show you something about painting that I didn't show last time. So if y'all have questions about the Chihuly, send me an email or ask me before you leave class. And it seems like a long time. Between tests, but you remember I broke the last test up into 2 parts. So this unit we're making it seems longer. Let's see, I'm going to make sure. Did we see this the other day when we were looking at painting and talking about acrylic? Did we see this? Y'all remember? Helen Frankenthaler? No? Okay. I'm going to start here because did we see this about Jacob Lawrence? Talk about gouache. We did that. Okay. I'm gonna go through this real quickly and then pick up with photography, and then we'll finish up on Thursday this unit. I'll give you review notes, but remember your notes. If you're not taking notes, you're gonna feel lost, especially when you're faced with all these chapters. If you wait until I give you your review notes, or some people wait until they come to class the day of the test, and they're looking through furiously trying to figure out what is going to be on the test. My goal is your success, right? So heads up, and you'll do well if you stay with it. This is Helen Frankenthaler. I'm not going to refer to the book page numbers, but this is one of the early acrylics, look, 1963. And this is her experiments with these large paintings over 6 feet square, just putting color on canvas and seeing what acrylics could do. Acrylics were fairly new. It was something that was developed as part of the plastics industry out of World War II. And so they used that. This is acrylic on canvas. This is sort of a statement about the dangers of coal. Y'all know a lot of the power that we have is from coal, from Tolk Station up near Muleshoe. And if you drive by there, you won't see anything. No smoke. because they have scrubbers on those burners, and it's easy to do cold clean. This is a fire, another fire. This is showing the things that happened to. You've got the smoke there, but the main subject is these people that were put in camps. They're Japanese Americans. Some might have been Japanese infiltrators, but probably not. So it's a sad episode in American history. But people were afraid because America had been attacked. So this is just a painting talking about that. But acrylic is used in a lot of ways on murals outdoors. The main thing is you have to protect it if it's outdoors. Have y'all ever heard this term that paint is fugitive, colors are fugitive? Drive by Dairy Queen here on College Avenue, just at the corner of the campus, and look at their red. Red is one of the colors that's most fugitive. That means that under ultraviolet rays, it sort of goes away and fades. I've seen red cars that do that. Paints now are better. Good lacquer paints are better. But unless it has a coating on it, it's going to fade. Now, your text doesn't show this, but it talks about this particular thing, using different experimental things like paint, digital media, and so on, and doing these screens that are interactive. One of the first non-paint works was using colored papers and charcoal and so on, and pieces of newspaper and magazines. So Juan Gris and his friend Pablo Picasso, were working. And this is Romare Bearden's collage of his neighborhood. You see the dove up there, but he just cut pages from newspapers and magazines and collaged them together. Sometimes that's included because he used some gouache paint in there and color pencil and everything. And this mixed media stuff like gluing shells and rocks and sand on is sometimes included in the paint. I talked about spray paint. Spray paint is fine if it's the right kind of spray paint and if you take precautions. And I mentioned that some of the early painters, we'll talk about this more, used maybe charcoal. There's some indication they found these tubes of bone and reed that they may have put paint in their mouth and blown it through there, so that was the first airbrush thousands of years ago. But this guy was known on the street as Crash, that was his street name, and he was tagging buildings and railroad cars and so on. Someone tracked him down. They said, "Are you Crash?" And he said, "No, my name is John Matos." He said, "But you're not going to get in trouble. If you'll paint some of your images on canvases and I'll show them in my gallery, we'll both make a lot of money," which they did. And so he started doing these. His friend said he sold out, but he said, so what? Our friend, Joey Martinez, who was one of my students, you may have seen his work in Lubbock. This has changed a little bit. Joey has done a lot of murals. He uses spray paint, and I keep fussing at him, and I say, "Joey, are you using your good dual cartridge respirator to protect your lungs? And then are you putting a UV coating on these?" And a good UV coating, if you put it on a mural like this, also, if somebody tags it, you can clean it off, and it doesn't hurt your mural. So, and that's at the Lewis Hopkins. Yeah, that's at the Underwood Center, yeah. And he's changed it a little bit since he first did it, and this is in Dallas at the Latino Cultural Center. It's all acrylic and spray paint. Banksy, you may have heard of. He's known for his stunts more than anything. I wanted to show you this. If you drive downtown Levelland, you may see this. It's faded over the years because they didn't fund it well, but my wife and I painted this. And this is what it looked like at one time. And it was never finished. We never got to finish it. And we worked for 6 weeks without any money just because we wanted to get it to a certain point. But this would have had a lot more detail. The leaves would have had detail. And then it would have had a UV coating on it. And but the flag, we were proud of a lot of the things that we did. That's a huge flag. And this is faded now. The building got hail damage on the roof, and it started leaking inside the cinder block. And so it's damaged and it's faded because it never was. They didn't have enough money to pay for it being finished. But it was like an old farmer's market, and these chickens escaped. And I was proud of what I did on that Ford truck. This used to be on campus, and I would take students down to the game room, and it was painted on the wall. They hired us to do this. I took students one year through the game room and showed them this. It's all acrylic on the cinder block wall. And a couple of days later, when my students came to class, they said, "Mr. Hope," and I said, "Are you okay?" And he said, "I can't believe it." And I said, "I thought something bad had happened." He said, "Well, they painted over your mural." I said, "What?" And so all this mural that we worked for 6 weeks to do, and you can see the 8 balls knocked off the table. This is called scratched big time. So they wanted something that showed, and my wife designed this, but we worked together on the painting. And then they cut an opening in the wall, but they tore the wall, and so we made it look like it was actually torn and peeled back. And so the clouds are in there. And then there's even a red-tailed hawk, or a golden eagle. We painted a golden eagle up in the sky. Yeah. I never was told. And so we did it from a fly's eye point of view, and I worked a lot on that cue stick. I used an individual cue stick and painted the wood grain on it. So that's a green bottle fly up close, and this lady that worked there said, "I'm sorry, but I have to put something up my window so I won't see that fly. It creeps me out." Good. Anyway, we signed this, like the chalk has that shield on it, and it says the world's best, so we just put our names on there. My wife's sister helped us and our son. So anyway, that's Goner. So I wanted to show you that. You see these things, if they're not taken care of, it's sad what happens to them. Now I'm going to start with photography here, but I want to talk about photography for a minute and make sure that you get this. And I'm not going to refer to page numbers right away. This is chapter 8 in your text. But have this in your notes. Photography means writing with light. Anytime you see the word graph, it's like your autograph, right? It means it's writing. And anytime you see the word that has the part that says photo is from the Greek for light. So some of you will miss this on the test. If I were to ask this, you would say photography is writing with light, right? Now the camera is a device for recording images. Now we're so spoiled, aren't we? We take our phone and take pictures. We got tons of them. By the way, do any of you back up your, it's on the cloud, but do you back up your photographs some other way? Good, do so. What do they say? Redundancy? You back them up in more than one place? Did any of you print photographs? Good. Any of you have one of those little cool Polaroid printers, the digital printers? Very cool. They're amazing, aren't they? So I urge you to print some of your favorite photographs and make albums. Yeah, we've got albums. We scroll through our pictures and so on. I love having it. And high resolution cameras like we have there. Does anybody have the new iPhone? I've seen just the film about it. It's like, I'm not going to spring for that right now. But a camera is just a device. And the original meaning of the word camera is a room. It's actually just a box or a room. Well, I have brought a camera here today. No, sorry, I don't have any granola for you or oatmeal. I have 2 cameras actually. And these, I used to do this with students. We would make a pinhole camera, and now they've got plastic lids on these. But these were actually cardboard light-tight cameras. I'm going to put this on the screen here. If I don't fumble it too much, it's going to come up. There we go. Get a little wider shot here. That's what I want. This is the shutter for the camera. And if you look here, there's a piece of foil and it has a tiny pinhole in it. And this is a pinhole camera. And so we would take inside this, we would open it up and put a piece of photograph paper. You have to do that in the dark room. And have any of you had photography and worked in the dark room? Not in the dark room. You had a photography class, digital photography. We have digital photography here, but we also have a dark room. And so I fell in love with doing that when I was a student, and I even loved it so much that I saved up a little money and bought my own enlarger. and I set up a dark room in my bedroom. My folks are pretty tolerant, and so I used the bathroom, put a red light bulb in the ceiling and all that. But this could be a camera, because with the foil glued in there and a tiny pinhole and then a way of opening and shutting the light off, and putting a piece in the dark room of photograph paper in there, which by the way is silver sensitive emulsion. Remember how silver tarnishes? Well, silver reacts to light. So put that in there and then have this, take it outside, have it closed up, and I have the students put a brick on it, and then they could aim it at something and count for, and not jiggle it or anything, just put a brick on top so it wouldn't move in the wind or anything, and count from 35, 40 seconds to a minute, and then close it up, and then we take them back in the dark room and take that out and process it in the dark. Then you go through the chemical steps, and then you have what is a negative image. And this is one I took of my house from the vacant lot, and you can even see the cardboard box it was sitting on. But then you take that and you wet it and put it with another piece of photograph paper and expose it to the light, and then you've got a positive image. I need to adjust my light here a lot. A positive image from this negative image. Pretty cool, huh? And that was taken with one of these oatmeal boxes. So, as simple as that is, that may help you understand how photography developed early. I have a collection of photographs. You can come, those of you here can come up and look at them. But photography, I find these at estate sales. They throw them away sometimes. But they also, I've paid $1 or $2 for these old tintypes. This is metal, and you can hear the metal sound, but it's just a metal, and some of these are kind of rusty. This one's gotten all wrinkled up, but I wanted to save them. I didn't want them thrown away. Like they discard some of these things. So it's just kind of amazing how photography has developed to a point where we sort of take it for granted. Anyway, I want to go back to the slides now, but if you're in class with me here, you can come up and look at these and see them. We're going to get there. It was there, wasn't it? Okay, here we go. So, from this idea that light is important, right? That light is important to the photograph, and the fact that an aperture is an opening in the lens that allows light to come in, just like the opening in your eye. People started experimenting with this idea because people could look at something and draw it, they could look at something and paint it, but it was almost like magic if you could take life and capture it some way. Like I said, we take it for granted. Just pull your phone out and take a picture, right? And you take a good picture, a high resolution image with good lenses. The new iPhones have multiple lenses on it. It's amazing. But the idea was that, now they're showing this in the text. I guess I could tell you what page we're on. They're showing this where photography developed from this idea of taking this room and shining light in an opening there. And I've done this with my art room. We used to be able to darken it. And some of you have been to the Mosaic Coffee Company downtown, but it used to be an office supply store. It used to be Script Office Supply. And the owner took us upstairs one time. He said, I want you to see something. So they had a metal sign over those windows that are exposed now, and they had little holes in them, and the windows were dusty, and you could see on the dusty windows a projection of everything that's going on in the street. Cars driving by, people walking by, upside down on there, projected from that little opening that was in there. It's working the same way as this camera obscura. And so they developed these rooms that they could, and some were portable, where they could allow light to come in and shine onto a wall, and artists used it so they could trace real life. Some people think that the Van Eyck's artwork, this is page 206, it's referring to this. I have a different image here. The Van Eyck's used camera obscura to get detail, perfect detail. Now, they were great artists. And here's a portable version of one using a mirror and projecting up onto a ground glass. So you can buy these like this now. And there are even some other devices out there. But the idea was it's a dark chamber, dark room with a pinhole that projects, you see upside down, just like the images on your retina are upside down, right? And the optic nerve in the brain reverse them so that we see them correct. But that's how they're taken. Here's another version of that, camera obscura. And this is a room, this is a photograph, a print of a room that's there in Paris. That's the Pantheon, this big dome building that's in the center of Paris. But you see it projected on the wall of the room from that little tiny pinhole. That's pretty amazing, isn't it? But that's what the camera does. So artists noticed this, they knew this phenomenon. They said, if we could just capture this. So they figured out a way, what the eye does, and of course film does this, your digital sensor, the brain of the camera does this, and records these images digitally, just like it does on film or like it does in the eye. This is one of the first images to capture something. And Joseph Niepce, a Frenchman, did this. Niepce is mentioned in your text. But it was very crude. Now this is the actual, if I were to ask you the very first permanent photographic image, it's this right here, done by Joseph Niepce. Look at the date. That's wild, isn't it? Almost 200 years ago. That's wild. The first image, and you think, well, that's not much, but it's a breakthrough because this exposure was several hours, and the only thing that he could take a picture of was something that didn't move. So he took a picture of these rooftops and these buildings. Can you see them here? And he used a pewter plate that had silver salts on it, and I think he used egg white because it's sticky, and then put a coating on there, and it exposed it over a long period of time. Now this actually still exists. It was almost thrown away in a box full of junk, someone thought. And someone had the foresight, divine intervention, I think, to go through that box, and they found it. Now that's the original plate, and it's saved. It's in Austin at Harry Ransom Center there on the UT campus. I've never seen it, but my son said you have to show your ID. You go through these dark hallways, and it gets darker and darker. You have to adjust your eyes to it, and it's in a very dark room. They have a very special light on it so it doesn't hurt it or fade it. But there it is in the original frame. So it's pretty amazing. And I don't need to talk about color negatives were a version of the exposing light to a negative that could be projected, black and white or color, and you have the negative in the print here. Your text says Daguerre on page 206, and I'm sorry that's cut off there. When they send these to me, that's how they are, and I didn't reformat this one. But this is Louis Daguerre. He was working with Joseph Niepce. Niepce died, so Daguerre took up the mantle and kept going with this idea of trying to find a way to capture a permanent image. And they couldn't do, we call daguerreotypes the first photographs. Niepce actually did the first permanent image, but Daguerre did things like this, things that wouldn't move. Remember, the exposures were several minutes long. But this is the first image that shows a person. Can you see the person in there? Is a guy getting his shoe shine on the corner. You see that rounded curve there at the lower left? And he stood still long enough to be captured by this. Now the exposure was shorter than an hour, just a few minutes, but there was traffic on this street, people driving carriages, walking up and down the street, but they weren't caught because they didn't stand still. So that's the first image that shows a person, but it's not the first permanent image. Now, your text talks about a British artist and photographer, Henry Fox Talbot, was experimenting with images that show the negative and the positive, and he did some of these things. I don't know if you've ever done these things, sun prints. You can buy those little packs at Science Spectrum, but it's like a blueprint thing, and you lay leaves or coins or shells or something on there like they did here, and expose them to that and capture them as a negative image. Because the sun, being the light exposed to that material, hardens it, and the other is left light. Now, this shows an early daguerreotype, and this lady was sitting still, and they had to be long exposures. Some of these are kind of blurry, and of course, look at it, it's 1841, and this is before the Civil War. They were taking these pictures. I've looked at a few of these. You can buy them online. I've looked at some at estate sales or, yes, sir. Of course. Yeah, you don't need to ask, just go. But this is a daguerreotype, which is on glass, and they put them in these special cases. And you may see these in old movies, but it's a velvet case. You can buy these for, $50 or $75. If they're really nice like this, they usually cost over $100. Someone in my family has one of my great-great-grandmother. I wish I had it, but it's in a little case like this. I have a picture of it, but not the real thing. And they experimented with different things. Here's another one of the blue cyanotypes, which that's chemical. I've done these, but you have to be really careful. It's very poisonous. A lot of these are. This shows the film photography. You have to put it in the darkroom in a tank and develop it, and then you take the film out, put it in an enlarger, and then you have to go through 3 stages, developing and then stopping the development and then fixing it. But these prints are still done by artists, and we still do them here in photography class. This is an early movie star of the day, really a star of stage. There were no movies in 1865. This is albumin print. Albumin is like egg white, right? And so mixing silver salts and exposing them, they got this print of Sarah Bernhardt. Now you notice how she's leaning on this little stand? She had to be very still for a long time. So the exposures were, 8 to 10 minutes, sometimes 15 minutes. So she had to really hold still for a long period of time. And yes, she's being very pensive, but she's holding her head still in that exposure. So she was the heartthrob. And these albumin prints like this, but one of the things that started happening, your text talks about different categories of pictures, but documentary pictures of real events, they had cameras on the battlefields in the Civil War for the first time. They recorded the aftermath of this horror of battle. I don't know if any of you have been to these Civil War battlefields. You go to Mississippi and some of these other states. You see hundreds and hundreds, thousands of gravestones. It's chilling to me to think that so many people were in conflict like this. This is a sharpshooter that got killed himself, and Alexander Gardner was one of those photographers that was hired to do this. Timothy O'Sullivan, after the Battle of Gettysburg, and this is horrible. Thousands of men died on both sides at this battle. This is where Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. And these guys didn't know what they were up against. Matthew Brady took this photograph, these guys getting ready to go into battle. But the exposure times had gotten shorter, so they could take pictures of men sitting like this. They just said, be still, and most of them were pretty still for just a few seconds, 15, 20 seconds, and then they had flash powder. You've seen that in movies. You take the image. Abraham Lincoln was the first president that was photographed, 1863, and he had his hand behind him. Some people speculate he probably had a stand that was holding him still. Matthew Brady developed these stands that people would lean against, or they could even be up against their back and hold on their neck so they wouldn't move or jiggle and the picture would be blurry. The Wright brothers, first flight, 1903. It was very important. The Wright brothers understood that nobody would believe them. Have any of you been to Kitty Hawk out on the Outer Banks of the Carolinas? Go there someday. It's a pretty amazing place. But you have to drive across a long bridge to get there. Now, in 1903, it was difficult to get there, but the Wright brothers from Ohio knew that they had to go to a place where there's a lot of wind to get this thing off the ground, even though they knew it would work. They thought it would work. But they said, we want to get a very good camera and we want to take pictures of this. And if you go to Kitty Hawk, they've got a nice museum and a big memorial there, but they have a place where the first flight took off and where it landed, and then the second flight was a little further out in the third flight. But this is a photograph and that thing's off the ground. And there were people that said, oh no, they didn't do this, but they wanted good photographic record of it. Your text has this on page 210. Dorothy Lang was hired by the government to find these displaced migrants. People from the central part of the United States during the Dust Bowl and the Depression went to California because they put up handbills and said, oh, there's a lot of work and it's the land of plenty. It was not really true. I just saw a part of The Grapes of Wrath. If any of you ever read that book or watched the movie, it's pretty chilling. The book's always better than the movie to me, so much better. But Dorothy Lang caught this image of these poor people. They were in a desperate situation. And your text gives you, I'm not going to ask you this, but you can kind of divide pictures up into landscapes and portraits, and then photojournalism, which documents events, and then documentaries of different things, like the Wright brothers were documenting their flight, and an artistic expression. Here's a landscape that was done by Ansel Adams. They had a show of Ansel Adams, one of the largest collections of Ansel Adams photographs. The National Archives has a lot of them, and I've seen them in collections in the Museum in New Mexico and other places. But there's an oil man in Midland, and he's a fairly young, I think he's in his 50s now, a black man who made a lot of money in the oil business, and he loved Ansel Adams, so he started collecting. He has thousands of Ansel Adams originals, and he put a show up at Tech a few years ago, some of his photographs, and it was just stunning, the beauty of these. Ansel Adams treated them. Now, I don't know how many of you have used Photoshop or other tools, digital tools. I love it. I do that with my photographs sometimes, and I use it in my art. I combine images and so on. Ansel Adams was just using a negative, and it was a large format negative. Some of his negatives were like this big, but he was exposing them through the enlarger on photograph paper that's silver, sensitive, gelatin silver prints, they say. But he was controlling it, and you have the dodge and burn tool on Photoshop, right? He was using dodge and burn tool by taking little wires and pieces of cardboard and dodging out areas so more light would go to other areas, or he was letting it burn in. He had pieces of paper with a hole in it, moving it around so it would burn the light in. So he was really an artist with photographs. Here's one of his pictures of Death Valley sand. And look at the light. Is the whole range of values in that picture? I think it is, isn't it? Pretty good range, which makes a good photograph. Ansel Adams said that when he was driving near Santa Fe, he looked in his rearview mirror in his old car that he had, and he said that he almost had a wreck trying to pull it over and get this big camera set up and take one picture as the moon was rising over these clouds over the mountains, and the light was hitting this little town and the cemetery. He said, I took one picture, and that was all I had time for. The light changed. Everything was different. But this is one of the most famous Ansel Adams photographs. I took students to the Museum of New Mexico one time, and they pulled out an original of this, which is worth, I don't know, thousands of dollars. And I was just hoping that one of my students would sneeze, because the lady was handling it with cotton gloves, and anyway. So this shows early portrait of John Herschel and 1867. But photography had developed so much that the exposure times are fairly short. People didn't have to sit so still. This is kind of an iconic picture of this guy. I love the hair and the light in his eyes. And your text has Lindsay Dario, who's a journalist, showing these Syrian refugees riding the bus. I've seen some photographs that have come out of Afghanistan. Just horrible things that are happening to people in the world. We're very blessed, folks, aren't we? We're very blessed here. But talking about documentary and different ways that people are documenting things, showing these people who have been displaced and telling stories with pictures. But just simple artistic expression, people using photographs, taking pictures. Edward Weston was a friend of Ansel Adams. Cabbage leaf doesn't seem like a good subject for a photograph. This is almost sculptural, isn't it? Beautifully done. And his bell pepper. Oh, Mr. Hope, you're showing us another nude. Well, it's just the knees, folks. It's all right. Photographs like this change things because child labor laws were not existent. So they were having kids work in mills. Now they do it in other places in the world, I know, but because of this they were showing these children that were in dangerous jobs like a mill, and so the child labor laws were passed because of this. These kids need to be in school, they said. And thank goodness Margaret Bourke White went in with Eisenhower's troops to Buchenwald and other places. And this is just horrifying to imagine this. I told you I'd been in Dachau and seen the concentration camp there. People say, there's still people today that say this never existed. Eisenhower wanted to make sure that people understood that this terrible horror where millions were killed needlessly, slaughtered because they were Jewish. He wanted to make sure that photographs were taken so we never ever forget. And of course photographs like this, the aftermath of 9/11. But Edward Steichen was taking photographs. This is the Flatiron Building. If you go to New York, it's this triangle-shaped building, like a painting. And they were using photographs like a painting. Your text doesn't have Steve McCurry. The former text did. He took this picture of this young girl in Afghanistan during one of the Afghan wars, who had seen so much horror. She was 13 or 14. And then he took pictures of the battlefields in Kuwait. He came to Tech, and I didn't get to see him. I would have loved to have gotten an autograph and heard him talk about how he got some of these amazing photographs in these great places. He tracked this lady down years later, from 1984 to 2002, and he said she was really not that old, but she'd been through so much, she looked like an old woman. She'd been through nightmares. These great photographs like this. An artist's eye to capture something like this. And of course this shows the photograph wall that there went up in New York after 9/11. And this is showing experiments where people were taking these huge photographs and trying to stage it like it was a painting. And Stieglitz was one of the first that used paintings to document things, but also to make an artist statement. The people that were the poor people down below in the steerage, and the people that were more well-to-do up top in the picture here. And then landscapes like this. Your text has this one that shows these kind of blurry figures in the sky here, more of an artistic thing. Has Sandy Skoglund. Now Sandy Skoglund likes to set up things in a room, so she made these paper mache cats and painted them these wild colors, and had these people pose with real furniture and to take this photograph. So she sells the photographs as an art piece. And I like this one. If you like Cheetos, you gotta like that one, right? No telling how long it took to set this thing up, but and then this revenge, this sort of dream nightmare, I don't know, set these boys up in this real room that's painted this way and hung these fish there, paper mache fish. It's not digital, it's just all photographed. But digitally combined photographs like this one, your text talks about that, and digital images and so on. Now, I'll talk about film next time. We're about out of time. So I'll finish up with film. And any questions about photography, though? All right. So we'll continue next time. We'll give you notes. Work on your Chihuly. Don't wait until the last minute on that. I think you'll have fun with it. Enjoy it. Send me questions if you got any questions. So when are you going to be gone? Oh, you just need your grade right now? Y'all take care. Bye-bye. See you.